morning to all of you.
Morning.
I've heard a lot about this group. Oh, hey, I can hear myself. I've heard a lot about this group, but it's my first time getting to visit with you, and that is one of my favorite things, is getting to visit Christians wherever they may be. I've had a few chances to get to meet Christians in other countries, a few in other states. I spent a year in Florida this past year, working in a state prison with the inmates there, and it was definitely an interesting job. But for those who don't know me, my name is John, or Jonathan Biesecker. You can call me whatever you like. I'm originally from Gettysburg. I'm back in Gettysburg now, and I'm not a full-time preacher, but I do appreciate the chance to get to preach to you and get to spend time with you today. If you'd like to read along, we'll be in Genesis 46. And I should give you an introduction. For today, for the next few minutes, and I also try not to be long-winded, but for the next few minutes, I want you to go on a trip with me. Like I said, I love traveling. I hope you do too. But we're not going to the Bahamas or to Paris or any of those nice destinations. I want you to go with me to Egypt. And we're not talking about the Egypt of today, the Egypt in the Bible. Think about what Egypt was. The first time we see Egypt mentioned is when Abraham goes to Egypt. Remember, he lies to Pharaoh, and there's that whole story. But then probably the most famous part of Egypt in the Bible is what? Well, the captivity, when they enslaved the children of Israel for 400 years. But before we get there, let's look at some of the dealings that the children of Israel had with Egypt. So in Genesis 46, verse 1, where we'll start. So think about what's happened before we get there. Remember, what did Joseph's brothers do because of their jealousy? Well, they were going to kill him originally, and I guess this is better. They didn't kill him. They sold him into slavery. So he's in slavery. He's sent to Egypt. And if you read the fascinating story of Joseph, you remember he goes from a slave in Potiphar's house to being Potiphar's steward. Well, then he's in prison because of Potiphar's wife and her dishonesty. Then after that, he becomes the second highest in the kingdom. And because of a famine, he's reunited with his family. So in 46, verse 1, Israel, that is Jacob, took a journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt. I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. Now you might be thinking, why are we reading that passage? That's very, rather obscure. But the point is, even though they're going to Egypt, they're leaving the promised land. Remember, this land has been promised to Abraham, and then it's promised to Isaac, and it has been promised to Jacob. But they're leaving it. They're going to Egypt. They're going to another country that's not theirs, that was never promised to them and never will be. And think about if you're Jacob, how you'd be feeling. You're an old man. If my grandparents are any example, older people don't really like changes as much as young people do. They kind of like their routine and what they're used to. But now you have to completely uproot your family, all of them, and take them into another country. And you can imagine how Jacob would be fearful. But what does God say? God says it's okay. You're going to go to Egypt. You're going to come back. Joseph, your son, will close your eyes. Meaning, when somebody dies, close their eyes to death. But I think the key is that you will come back. You're not going to stay in Egypt. God's going to fulfill that promise. Let's move on a little bit to Genesis chapter 50. A lot happens in Genesis 50. Jacob does die. He dies in the land of Egypt. Excuse me. Read with me in verse 1. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and went over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, if now I found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, I am about to die. In my tomb I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father. Then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, go up and bury your father as he made you swear. We won't read the whole section, but Pharaoh doesn't just give Joseph permission. He gives Joseph a guard. He gives them a procession. Basically, Jacob is given the funeral of a Pharaoh. And they go all the way to Israel, and there he's buried. Move on a little bit more in the chapter to Genesis 50, 22. So Joseph remained in Egypt, in his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land, the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. And Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. Then Bamtu, he was put in a coffin in Egypt. So in these stories, what's the similarity? They're in Egypt. They're prospering in Egypt. They'll go from about 75 persons to some rough estimates, when they leave Egypt, over 1 million. They prospered in Egypt, even though they were slaves. But what is their focus? Their focus for both Israel or Jacob, whatever you want to call him, and Joseph, is not Egypt. It's going home. It's Israel. It's the promises that God has given them. Why am I bringing that up? You'll see here in a few minutes, we're going to talk about what is our Egypt. Where are we? And you'll see that Egypt, instead of the curse that it is, the Israelites start looking at it as almost a blessing, as a security, though it's not. Let's look in Exodus 14. And I do apologize. I prefer when I preach to find one passage and talk about one passage, but we're going to be moving around looking at this through the Bible, so keep your Bibles open. In Exodus 14, think about this. So 400 years have passed since Joseph's death. They've been enslaved. Think about what that life means of being a slave. You're born. You will live as a slave. You will die. Your children will do the same thing. For 400 years. That's all you know. And you think that's all you ever will know. But then God sends Moses. And through the stories of the 10 plagues, the people are freed. Look in Exodus 14. They haven't gotten very far, just to the banks of the Red Sea, to the east of Egypt. And we'll start in verse 5. When the king of Egypt was told the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed towards the people, and they said, what is this that we have done? We've let Israel go from serving us. So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel, while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and camped by the sea, by Pir Hareoth, in front of Bel-Zephon. So, think about this. Again, you're mighty in number, but you're not an army. The Israelites were not an army. They were freed slaves. And you're out in the middle of the wilderness, heading towards the Red Sea. What's coming behind you? Not just an army, but at the time, the greatest army the world had ever seen. The Egyptians were the world superpower at the time. And Pharaoh has sent not just his 600 chosen chariots, but it says all of his chariots, all of his army is pursuing you. What did the Israelites do? Continue with me. Verse 10. Pharaoh drew near to the people, lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you take us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better of us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Moses said to the people, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For you, excuse me, the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. So again, think about it. Not long ago, how excited were they to leave Egypt? Extremely. They left in the middle of the night. It says they plundered the Egyptians. The Egyptians basically paid them to leave. And they also took Joseph's bones with them. We see that later. They were really excited, but what has changed? What's changed? They're not excited anymore. What are they saying to Moses? Why did you bring us here? We could have died in Egypt. It would have been better to die in Egypt than to die in the wilderness. I think if you study the Israelites very long, you realize they always want to be where they were. Continue on. Numbers 14. So think about it. God delivers them. We know the story of the Red Sea, how the Red Sea swallows up the Egyptian army, and they're freed, and when they're on the other side, they're singing praises again. But in Numbers 14, we'll start in verse 1. So, this is after they've gotten to the promised land. They sent the spies, and what did the spies say? Well, two of them trust God, Joshua and Caleb. Trust God and say, we can take this land. God has delivered us before, he will deliver us now. We will take this land. God promises that we will do it. There's only one problem. There were 10 other spies. They did not give the same report. The report the 10 other spies gave is, well, it's a great land. Yeah, it is. The food's good, cities are tall, or the cities are mighty, excuse me. The problem is they're walled cities, they're strong cities. And not only that, there's giants in the land. Which, side point, when has a giant ever stopped God? Just look at David and Goliath. There's other stories in the Bible. A giant has nothing to do with God. But so start in verse 1 with me. In chapter 14, verse 1, then all the congregation raised a loud cry, and people wept that night. And all the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives, our little ones will become a prey. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And they said to one another, let us choose a leader and go back to Egypt. We'll stop there. We're going to continue reading in a minute. What are they saying now? Remember when they were in the wilderness, where did they want to go? I want to go back to Egypt. It'd be better for us to die in Egypt. Now they're saying, even if we can't go to Egypt, it'd be better to die in the wilderness. Well, that's what they were afraid of. God delivered them from that. But now they want to go back to that. Notice the change. Instead of being in Egypt and saying, we're going to get back to the promised land that Joseph and Jacob said, now they're saying, we're at the promised land. We want to go to Egypt. Their focus has shifted a whole 180. Also notice what they said. It'll be better to die in the wilderness. God will grant them that wish. He will let them die in the wilderness, but not quite yet. Verse 5. Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the people of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy out is exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. And protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Look at the children of Israel's reaction. And all the congregation said to stone them with stones, but the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. The Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me? In spite of all signs that I have done among them, I will strike them with a pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make you a nation greater and mightier than they. So not only do they rebel against God and they say they want a leader, think about the leaders they have. They have Moses and Aaron. God chose them. They had Joshua and Caleb, righteous men. God will eventually choose Joshua to lead the people after the death of Moses. But what's the Israelites' reaction? When they point out when the promises of God are pointed out to them, they decide we should stone them. We should silence them. We should make them shut up because we want to go back to Egypt. The problem is, the Israelites wanting to go back to Egypt didn't just end there. God gives them the land. After the 40 years in the wilderness, God will give them the land. And now we need to fast forward a little bit in history. Fast forward through the time of the judges. Fast forward through Saul, who at first was a good king, but wow, did he fall off the wagon hard. And he basically goes insane. Then you have David, a righteous man. Though he made serious mistakes, he was a righteous king for 40 years. Then you get to Solomon. Solomon, we know, the wisest man that had ever lived, I would say that ever has lived. Look in 1 Kings 3. Solomon makes some critical errors, and one of them is that he turned back to Egypt. 1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 1. Solomon made a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He took Pharaoh's daughter and brought her into the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. The people were sacrificing at the high places, however, because no house had been built for the Lord. So think about this. What was one of the things the Israelites were not to do? And they were told this again and again and again and again. Don't marry the nations around you. Marry among your own people. Why? That wasn't just a cultural thing to keep the Israelite culture. It was their religion. God knew if you marry people from that worship other gods, what will that do? And you see time and time again, what does that do almost every single time? It leads them away. Who has Solomon married? The princess of the Pharaoh of Egypt. He's made a marriage alliance, a treaty with the Egyptians. Solomon keeps doing this. 1 Kings chapter 10. And remember, while you're turning there were three things that kings were not to build up. God told the kings, do not do this. They were not to have lots of wives. Well, Solomon blew that out of the water with 1,000 between his wives and concubines. Excuse me. They were not to build up a military, specifically horses and chariots. And you think, what's the big deal about a horse and chariot? That's like the Abrams tank or the stealth fighter of today. That was your military technology, your military strength. They were not to build up wealth. Now, God blessed Solomon with wealth, but you see Solomon building up his own wealth, and look at how he does it in 1 Kings chapter 10. And we'll start in 26, chapter 20, or verse 26, excuse me. Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities with the kings in Jerusalem. And the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone, and he made cedar as plentiful as the sycamore of the Shephelah. And Solomon's import of horses was from Egypt and Cu. And the king's traders received from Cu at a price. A chariot could be imported from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. So through the king's traders, they were exported to all the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Syria. What would we call this today? We call that an arms deal. That's what Solomon had with Egypt. He's importing and exporting Egyptian weaponry, basically. You think that was pleasing to God? Doubt it. He was told not to do that. Then it gets even more serious. Fast forward again. Now, after Solomon, what happens to the kingdom? We talked about it a little bit today in Bible class. After Solomon, his son is a foolish man and prideful. So the kingdom splits. Kingdom splits. Israel is carried away. Then you come to the prophet Jeremiah. We'll be reading Jeremiah chapter 44. Jeremiah 44, and I'll start in verse 24. What are the people wanting to do? They want to go back to Egypt. again, even though this is hundreds of years later. Jeremiah said to all the people and all the women, "Hear the word of the Lord, all you Judah who are in the land of Egypt. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of all Israel. You and your wives have declared with your mouth and fulfilled with your hands, saying, we will surely perform our vows that we have made, make offerings to the Queen of Heaven, to pour out drink offerings to her." Excuse me. "Therefore, hear the word of the Lord, all you in Judah who dwell in the land of Egypt. Behold, I have sworn by the great name, says the Lord, and my name shall no more be invoked by the mouth of any man in Judah in all the land of Egypt, saying, as the Lord God lives. Behold, I'm watching over them for disaster, and not forget them. All the men of Judah who are in the land of Egypt shall be consumed by the sword, by famine, until there is an end to them. Those who escape the sword shall return from the land of Egypt to the land of Judah, few in number. All the remnant of Judah who came to the land of Egypt to live shall know whose word will stand, mine and not theirs." Think of what God's saying. Jeremiah has prophesied that captivity is coming. Because of their disobedience, captivity is coming. There's nothing they can do to escape it. But they try to work outside of what God has said. They try to go to Egypt thinking that the Egyptian government, the Egyptian military will protect them. But what does God say? God says, you can try that, but it won't work. I'll destroy them. The sword and pestilence and famine will come upon you, and it says that they will be destroyed. Those that survive will come back, but they will be few, because I will destroy them. My word stands, and not theirs. I almost imagine God, and as a child, if you ever made the mistake of arguing with your parents, I did that one time, and I lost. Almost imagine God saying, "This is what I said, because I told you so." So, why do we talk about Egypt? Why do we talk about Israel? Israel and Egypt now aren't that big of a deal. Why does that affect me? Why does that affect you? But you see what Israel did with Egypt. They looked to Egypt for their security. So my question to you is, what is your Egypt? Probably it's not the nation of Egypt. But what is your Egypt? What do you look to in a time of trouble? So let's talk about that for a few minutes. What are things that people look to in hard times or sad times? Well, in my job, I work for county government. I see a lot of people that turn to drugs, turn to alcohol, turn to chemical substances to change the way they feel about life. Some people turn to pornography or sexual relationships to try to feel better. I think men more than women, but women can as well. We look at our work. We identify with what we do physically as our identity, our security. But you realize that you can be a single person, never married. You can be the poorest person in the world and still have God. Most of the people in the first century, were they rich or poor? They were poor. Some of them were slaves. They had, physically, the clothes that were given to them. But they had God, and they had that security. I think sometimes our security is who we are. We're Americans. We live in arguably one of the greatest nations in the world. What does a great nation have to do with God? Can God humble a great nation? Yes, He can. And He has. Will He do that to us? I don't know. But He could if He wanted to. What else? I think sometimes we pride ourselves in things that can be good things. That we're a Christian. That we go to church. We do the things that we don't do the things that we shouldn't do. Well, the Pharisees did that. Think about what the Pharisees said. We have Abraham as our father. Basically, we followed Abraham. What does God say? What does Jesus say to them, I should say? God can raise up sons of Abraham from these stones. It's not about how good we are. It's not about the church we go to or how many times we go to church. Now, I'm not saying don't go to church. Go to church. Be an active part of the group here. But that's not what we should take our security in, take our refuge in. Hebrews chapter 9 is where we'll close. here in just a few minutes, or excuse me, Hebrews chapter 3, I should say, is where we'll close here in a few minutes. So that's my challenge to you for this coming week, is think, where is my security? What am I putting my trust in? Maybe it's my family. Maybe I have a wealthy or a powerful family. Again, big deal. There's so many different things. And I want you to think about that for yourself. Where am I putting my trust this week? Is it in God? Is it in something else? Look at what God says in the book of Hebrews. And again, think about, put yourself in the position of these Hebrews. What is going on? Persecution on a serious level. People are being killed. You think about Stephen in Acts chapter 8, or excuse me, Acts chapter 7. Others. Think about what it would be like in this group if 1 or 2 or 3 of you were killed because of your faith in God. Would that be difficult? Absolutely. It would be heartbreaking. There's stories in Rome of Christians meeting in tombs because that was the only place they could to stay alive. So these Hebrews are facing a hard and difficult life. But look at what the writer says to them in Hebrews chapter 3. Hebrews chapter 3. We'll start. It's not very long. We'll start in verse 1. Hebrews 3, verse 1. Therefore, holy brothers, you who share in a heavenly calling, consider Jesus the apostle and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to him who appointed him, just as Moses also was faithful in all of God's house. For Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, as much more glory as the builder of a house has more honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all of God's house as a servant to testify to the things that were to be spoken later. But Christ is faithful over God's house as a son. And we are his house, if indeed we hold fast our confidence and our boasting in our hope. Therefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion on the day of testing in the wilderness, where your fathers put to the test and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore I was provoked with that generation, said, they always go astray in their heart, and have not known my ways. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. Exhort one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original confidence, firm to the end, as it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. For who were those who heard and yet rebelled? Was it not those who left Egypt led by Moses? And with whom was he provoked for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose bodies fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest? But those who were disobedient. So we see that they were unable to enter because of unbelief. Now, I know it's customary to offer an invitation. The invitation is just that. Maybe you find yourself in that wilderness in your life. You think about it. Our lives, for most people, the vast majority of people, are not all good, all bad. We kind of, like a roller coaster, go up and down. Maybe you're in a good point in your life. You're at the top of that hill. Don't forget God. That's something that people are very good at doing. When things are good, we forget God. We forget the blessings of God. Maybe you're at the bottom of that hill and your life's hard. I don't know. But when you're in the bottom of that hill, the same thing holds true. Don't forget God. Think of Job when he's in the he had a very low hill. Think of Job when he said, to his wife, you speak as a mad woman. Because she told him, curse God and die. He had nothing else to live for, but he did. He had God. So whatever your security is in this week, make sure it's in God. If you need help with your brother, or maybe you need to put on Christ, let us know in whatever way you feel comfortable as we stand and sing together.